Hi there everybody, welcome back once again to From the Ash. Good to have you here for a video that has been quite a long time in the making. I've been trying to put this video together for a long time, and I thought this would be the best time to release it to you, because today I'm going to be putting the James Bond movies, all 25 of them, in order from worst to best. When I was younger, I remember the Bond films were on TV quite a lot. I think it was ITV, they went through and they used to put one on a week. And I got into them, started watching them, and I love them. I love the Bond films, big James Bond fan. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe while you're here for more of this kind of content that I've got coming up soon as well. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Let's get into it. These are the James Bond movies, in my opinion, worst to best. The worst Bond film I've ever seen and the worst one in existence, and I doubt you'll disagree. Pierce Brosnan's final effort, Die Another Day. Not a fan, never been a fan of it. I saw it in the cinema when it first came out. In fact, it was the first Bond film that I ever saw in the cinema, but even then, I thought the villain was very forgettable, not very menacing. In fact, I don't even remember the guy's name. Like, he wasn't a strong villain. The CGI in that movie, it was so bad. Do you remember the bit of the film where James Bond like windsurfs on the back of a drag racer car that he's stolen? What were they thinking? And Madonna is in it. Madonna is in the movie. The less said about her cameo and her theme tune, the better. Coming in at number 24 is one that for me is not too far behind. Quantum of Solace. Very forgettable. Again, the villain, forgettable. The script for this movie wasn't given very much TLC at the time due to a writer's strike, and it really shows. Like, there's not a lot of depth in the script. Number 23 is Sean Connery's last James Bond film in an official capacity, Diamonds Are Forever. He was coaxed back into the role having quit after You Only Live Twice, but he came back to do Diamonds Are Forever, and he really shouldn't have bothered. It wasn't a particularly, again, not a good Bond film for me. It was made in the 70s, but you watch other movies that were made around that time or even before that, and they've aged better. It just looks like an old movie, but not in a good way. The ending of that film, the whole thing with Blofeld getting into his Bartho sub and being lowered into the ocean via some crane thing, it was a bit laughable. It was so not Bond-like. It felt more like a comedy movie at times than a Bond film. It was very odd. Vegas was a good choice for a backdrop for the movie, but it just felt very wasted on the actual movie. So for me, Diamonds Are Forever is not one to rewatch. Number 22, I've put Octopussy. Strangest Bond title. It was very Roger Moore cheesy. You know, Roger Moore's got this reputation as being sort of a more comical Bond, and it comes through quite a lot in Octopussy. I remember there being a bit where there was a chase scene in a jungle, and there was Bond did an actual Tarzan scream. There was also a bit where I seem to remember he recognised his own theme tune music that was being played by a snake charmer on some kind of flute. The theme tune was probably the worst of all the Bond theme tunes out of all 25. All Time High by Rita Coolidge. Just not a Bond theme for me. There was a rickshaw chase that I remember enjoying, but again, villain not great. Not Roger Moore's best either. I don't know, just not one that ranks particularly highly in my memory, to be honest. Number 21, For Your Eyes Only. A movie that I don't remember particularly well, which doesn't bode very well, does it? It was obviously quite a forgettable movie. In fact, I think this was the one where they had that weird sort of Margaret Thatcher impersonator in there. I remember that being in there, and again, just thinking, why is this in a Bond movie? And it was the one actually with a 14-year-old skiing protege or ice skating protege tries to bed a sort of 55-year-old and aging rapidly Roger Moore. Although one thing that I do remember being quite good in this, Roger Moore played Bond, I think, the best he ever did play Bond. He had a sort of seriousness and intensity about him that you don't see in a lot of his Bond films. He's normally on the sort of comedic edge of things, but in this one he was a little more serious. They explored the character of Bond and his loss and all of that in a little more detail, which I really liked. So Roger Moore was quite good, but the movie itself, again, quite forgettable and certainly not a classic. Now at number 20, I've gone with one that some people would say is a classic, maybe even like top 5 material, and that is Thunderball. I didn't particularly enjoy it, I've got to be honest. I felt a lot of the movie was shot underwater. It did slow the pace of the movie down to like a snail's pace. I thought at times I was thinking, come on, get going a bit, but it never really did for me. And that opening scene where Bond sort of convinces is it a masseuse or a doc? No, I think it was a masseuse at the spa that he was relaxing at. He sort of convinces her that actually she does want him and that her saying no is a bad idea. It just felt a bit creepy, and particularly in light of a lot of things that are going on right now, it didn't really sit very well with me. It didn't age well, that scene at all. Just above Thunderball at number 19, I've got A View to a Kill. Christopher Walken's in this with Grace Jones, and to be honest, they are the highlight of this film. But my overwhelming feeling with A View to a Kill is that I remember watching it and just thinking, my goodness, Roger Moore is old. he looks old in this, and you just feel this was maybe one Bond film too many for him. He probably should have stopped the one before this, which I think was Octopussy. One big positive with this film though, the theme song, and it is Duran Duran, A View to a Kill. What a track. Very 80s, very James Bond, very catchy, very, very good. But as for the film, meh. At number 18, I've gone for Spectre, which is another Daniel Craig Bond film. It wasn't terrible, like I didn't hate it. I really like Christoph Waltz, so I was really happy to see him in the role of Blofeld, and I think he played it very, very well. And the bit before the credits, the pre-credit sequence in Mexico with the sort of Day of the Dead festival, and that really, really long tracking shot that follows Bond for a good few minutes, I think. All of that was really, really good, and I liked that. It was a great opening to the movie. It wasn't Skyfall. Like, Skyfall came before it, and everyone loved Skyfall, and we will talk about Skyfall a little more later. And I think this was just a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of an anticlimax after how good Skyfall was. At 17, I've gone with Dr. No. It was the first Bond film, of course, as we know. And this one feels a lot more like the books, you know, like a proper sort of Ian Fleming spy espionage type movie. The scenes involving Ursula Andress are, of course, very famous. It was filmed in Jamaica, a lot of it, which is, of course, where a lot of the Bond books were written. And while it is lacking in sort of special effects and that kind of thing, and it's clearly been done on a really, you know, shoestring budget, it set a blueprint for the Bond films to follow, and so for that reason I've got it higher than the movies we've mentioned already. But I don't know, I think with the bigger budgets and with the, you know, the expansion of the character and all of that came better movies, and so that's why I've put it at 17. At 16, I've got The Living Daylights. Now, it's Timothy Dalton's first Bond film, and for me, I feel like Timothy Dalton would have gone on to be a really good Bond, maybe even one of the better ones, if he'd been given longer. Of course, he only did the 2 films, but it's a testament to him that both of his movies feature this highly in the list. It's a move away from the sort of comedy element of Bond that we saw a lot of with Roger Moore. It's a lot more gritty, it's a lot more back to the sort of roots, the spy, the espionage, Cold War, all of that's in there, and that's all very James Bond-like. But, you know, I don't know, it just didn't really have that X factor of some of the Bond films higher up in the list. Again, it was in places quite forgettable, I feel, and the villain in this one was not good. At 15, I've got Timothy Dalton's other Bond film, License to Kill. You can only call it gritty. That's how you would sum up this movie. There was a lot of violence in it. There was swearing. I remember James Bond swearing in this movie, and when I first saw it, I thought, is he allowed to swear? Is he allowed to do that? Like, Bond had never sworn, and there'd never been any sort of violence or gore or any of that, but it was all in there in License to Kill. It was a very gritty film, and I quite like that. I think Bond should be a bit more edgy and a bit more gritty than perhaps we'd seen with Roger Moore. However, maybe it does go too far that way sometimes, and he loses some of that sort of suave charm and debonair, you know, character that we know and love about Bond. There wasn't a lot of that in this film. It was just very gritty. But there are some good sequences, particularly that tanker chase at the end that everyone seems to remember really well. Thought Robert Davi was quite a good villain. Benicio del Toro as well was very good in the movie as the sort of sub-villain or the henchman. So there were some plus points, but again, I feel like there were films that were better, so we're gonna go with that one at number 15. At number 14, I've got the latest Bond film, No Time to Die. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, please skip this section of the video. There will be spoilers. I can't put it any clearer than that. I'm going to be talking about the movie, and I'm going to be talking about some fairly major plots in the movie, so skip using the chapters down below, or just go ahead by sort of a minute or so and you should be able to skip over everything I have to say about this film. I won't mention it again after this section, but let's talk about No Time to Die. I quite liked it as a movie. I think the cast were very, very good. You know, the supporting cast, particularly of Q and M, the new 007 that we've got, Tanner, who else did we have? Moneypenny in there. They were a great supporting cast, and I feel, you know, for the Daniel Craig era, they were perfect. They were progressive, they were relevant to the world today. Really, really good, really like them. However, and this is where we're really going to go into one of the sort of big spoilers here. So again, last call, I'm going to be talking about a spoiler in my next sentence. I don't feel that they can kill off James Bond. I mean, for me, I always felt safe at night knowing that if something went wrong with the world, James Bond would be there to save us all. That can't happen anymore because he's dead. Bond died in the movie. And I just don't know. It didn't really sit well with me that they killed him off. I don't know. Of course, I'm sure they have their reasons for doing so. Perhaps they're going to go in a different direction with the character of Bond. Or, more likely, in my opinion, they're keeping the Daniel Craig movies to, you know, some kind of alternate Daniel Craig Bond universe, and they want to start again with the next movie, and that's fine. But killing off James Bond, I don't know. I don't know if I liked it. The script of the movie felt less than perfect. There's a few lines that just made me roll my eyes. I remember when the new 007 said, "What time is it? It's time to die," and then killed that scientist guy. I mean, no. You know, on the whole, I mean, Rami Malek, I'm a big Rami Malek fan, thought he was decent in the movie. But, you know, even that, his reason for wanting to kill millions of people with that vial of, you know, thing was, what exactly? Like, what was his reason? I don't know, it wasn't elaborated on very well, so I thought the script wasn't great, but as a movie, I've put it in at 14, somewhere down the middle. I feel like that's about right. At 13, I've got Moonraker. Moonraker divides opinion for a lot of reasons, and I get it. I do get it. I mean, is there a sillier James Bond film? I don't think there is. Moonraker's pretty silly. It's as though they basically just went, Star Wars is doing well right now, guys. Should we just put Bond into space and see what happens? I quite like the backdrop of Rio de Janeiro and Venice. The opening skydiving fight was amazing. You know, what a stunt, what an opening to the movie that was. And there was a bit of menace in there as well. You know, the scene where the lady, I remember there was a lady who got mauled by some dogs in the wood. You can tell I haven't seen this movie in ages. There was that scene where the lady got mauled by some dogs in the woods. Bond got trapped in the centrifuge thing, the G-force simulator. You know, there was a bit of menace in the movie at times. However, as we have come to expect from a Roger Moore movie, there was just quite a lot of comedy and silliness, and that's not what I love about Bond films. You know, I want there to be good action, a bit of grit, a bit of something, you know, a little bit of emotion even. There wasn't a lot of that in Moonraker. And you had like Jaws falling in love with some short pigtailed blonde girl and a pigeon that does a double take like that. What's that all about? That's not Bond. We've just gone past the midway point in the list now, so a lot of the movies now probably contain more positives than they do negatives. And at 12, I've gone for a Pierce Brosnan classic, The World Is Not Enough. I've always said that this one was quite underrated. I just really enjoyed it. The subplot of the sort of pipeline and the oil and all that stuff felt like relevant. It felt like something that could happen. But you know, I liked the fact that they gave Desmond Llewellyn a really good send-off. That was his final appearance as Q. M was given a little bit more prominence, and Judi Dench, of course, is great in the role as M. I didn't like Denise Richards, of course, because I don't know anyone who particularly liked Denise Richards in the Bond girl role. I thought the villain, being Electra King, who Bond kind of fell in love with a little bit, was good. I thought she was a great villain, very menacing, but you know, kind of seductive in her way as well. It was a great casting. It's very watchable. The script was good. I liked it. I really enjoyed this movie. At 11, I've got another Pierce Brosnan one, Tomorrow Never Dies. Now, the villain in this one, they've gone for something again, you know, the villain that could be a real person. Rupert Murdoch. Michelle Yeoh is very good as Wei Lin as well. She's probably one of my favourite Bond girls. I do Bond girls in inverted commas. The motorbike scenes between her and James Bond on the bike are brilliant. You know, what a brilliantly shot scene that was. Really enjoyed that. I remember enjoying the bit in the car park where Bond's controlling his car from the back seat via his smartphone. You know, things like this are, yeah, very memorable. There was the scene with Dr. Kaufman, you know, all of those, a little bit of comic relief. You know, there was lots of really good memorable bits in this film. Again, feel like it's quite underrated, but yeah, really enjoyed Tomorrow Never Dies. A good movie. Right, we're into the top 10 now. We're getting serious. This one, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the only George Lazenby James Bond film. One that I've not seen too many times, but one that you cannot forget, simply because of that ending. You know, it's the movie that gives James Bond his heart, if you like. He loves and loses very quickly his wife, and the whole thing is very emotional and kind of has a knock-on effect throughout the rest of the series. It's perfectly teamed with the Louis Armstrong song, We Have All the Time in the World. Shouldn't be a Bond theme, that one, but it works so well. And George Lazenby's actually not that bad as Bond. You know, he didn't have a lot of acting experience, and at times I feel like it does show. But on the whole, again, it's another approach of the actual spy genre that Bond is supposed to be. You know, this is before the time that we've had the sort of comedy element introduced properly. So it's very James Bond-like, and that's one of the best things you can say about the film. Shot in beautiful Switzerland. I thought Telly Savalas was quite good as Blofeld. It was enjoyable, and that's why it's in my top 10. Number 9, I've gone with one that always splits opinion. This one gets battered quite a lot in these types of lists. Man with a Golden Gun. I quite like it. I've got to say, this was one of the first Bond movies I ever saw, and I just quite like it. I can't explain it properly. I just enjoy the movie. I didn't enjoy the bit where they did the amazing car stunt, the 360 sort of spin that the car does, and for some unbeknown reason there was a sort of slide whistle noise over the top. No idea what that was about, and there are a few moments in the movie where you sort of think, what was that all about, you know? But on the whole, I thought it was very, very good. Christopher Lee's amazing, as we know. I quite like Nick Nack as a sidekick as well. I thought that worked quite well. It does at times feel with this one, however, that they do try and go down the whole sort of Bruce Lee Kung Fu movement that was happening at the time. There was a lot of those types of films coming out around the time this was released, and it feels like they tried to piggyback onto that a little bit. But on the whole, I really liked it. A very, very fun James Bond film, if nothing else. At number 8, I've got one that's quite often at the top of people's lists, so I've got it in at 8, and that is Goldfinger. Sean Connery at his best, absolutely, supported by a brilliant cast. You know, you've got potentially the best villain, potentially the best henchman, potentially the best Bond girl, potentially the best car, potentially the best theme tune. Shirley Bassey, I almost said Shirley Ballas, but that's Strictly Come Dancing. Shirley Bassey in this theme tune nails it. And that note at the end of Goldfinger, my goodness, how? At number 7, I've gone with Goldeneye, which is Pierce Brosnan's first effort as Bond. It was a brilliant film, one of the best action movies of the 90s, and it also gave us, of course, one of the best computer games of the 90s as well. It feels like a bit of a reboot for the series, this film. It feels like they tried to do something completely different because of the sort of underwhelming return on the movies that Dalton did. I think box office-wise, they weren't particularly commercially successful. Great Bond girl, great villain, you know, Sean Bean in the role as a villain, having been Bond's sort of colleague and friend. Genius, absolute masterstroke, and I'm a big Sean Bean fan anyway. And the action in the movie's off the charts. You know, we're going through walls in St. Petersburg on a tank. We're doing bungee jumps off a dam in Switzerland. You know, it's all there. Number 6, The Spy Who Loved Me. What a patriotic opening to the movie, I have to say. Like, when you think of Bond films and their openings and their theme tunes and their title sequences working together, Spy Who Loved Me nails it. You've got one of the best stunts ever seen in a Bond film, where he jumps off the edge of that mountain on his skis, and just when it's looking like he's gonna die, out comes that Union Jack parachute, and in comes Carly Simon's Nobody Does It Better, potentially the best Bond theme again, or at least one of the best. You get Jaws. Jaws comes in for the first time before he became sort of cheesy or overly done in Moonraker. He was actually quite a menacing villain in this one. You know, you get the backdrop of Egypt and the pyramids and Sardinia they go to. It's brilliantly shot, looks really good on screen. Roger Moore is eased into the role as Bond by now, and it's just a very, very enjoyable spy movie. That's the key as well. It's not overly cheesy, it's not overly gimmicky. It's a Bond film, and we love it. At number 5, Live and Let Die. Roger Moore's first Bond film, and it's got a very distinct feel to it. It's very much its own thing. They've got the whole kind of voodoo subplots going on, and that gives some quite good little storylines and things that happen, and good characters as well. None more so than Baron Samedi. What a great villain he was. I love the action in this one as well. Like, you think about the speedboat chase. What a brilliant sequence that was. All right, it was a little bit long, but it was enjoyable. And I don't know, I think this one just feels like a Bond film should. The crocodile, the bit where he runs across the backs of the crocodiles, you know, such a cool stunt. And then you've got, it's just the simple things like the spinning booth that he is in that Filet of Soul place, and the watch with the magnet, you know, all of that stuff. It just feels very sort of James Bond-like. And could we just talk, by the way, about the theme tune? This is actually my favorite Bond theme, I think. It's one of them songs that's really stood the test of time. Like, people cover it and play it all the time now. At number 4, I've got You Only Live Twice, which, again, splits opinions a lot. I've got it in there very much for personal reasons. This was the first James Bond film I ever saw. I remember it coming on ITV, and I had my little TV in my bedroom, and I sat and I watched it late into the night. I'm not even sure I was supposed to be up, but I just got hooked on it and I watched it on that TV and I loved it. And since then, I've been a massive Bond fan. So that movie, You Only Live Twice, has a lot to answer for. You know, it's very well shot as well, which is something I like. It shows off Japan, which is, back when it was filmed in the 60s, probably a part of the world that people here and in the Western world knew very little about and saw very little of. So you get a real glimpse into, you know, a real piece of history there, I feel. I mean, you think of Donald Pleasance as Blofeld. Excellent. He is Blofeld, like he's perfect for the role. And you've got the volcano lair that happens there. You know, that set, I mean, amazing, amazing, amazing. A lot of the expectations we have of Bond films, I feel, came from You Only Live Twice. You know, that evil villain stroking a cat and the big hidden lair for the bad guy. You know, all of that, You Only Live Twice is where you find it. And I do love that movie. At number 3, I've got From Russia with Love. A lot of people sometimes forget this one, I feel, when talking about James Bond movies. It was the second Bond film ever made, of course. I don't know if I've ever seen a Bond movie that is closer to the books than From Russia with Love is, and I have read a lot of the James Bond books as well. And this just feels like, you know, that. It feels like the character Fleming wrote. It feels like the sort of place that Bond would have gone in the books. It's the Cold War / spy / espionage Ian Fleming genre in a movie. That's what it is, and it just works. And where the movie really excels is those scenes on the Orient Express, you know, all the stuff between the character Red Grant and James Bond. The fight scene on the train is one of the best fight scenes in Bond history. It's tense, it's close, you feel like you're in the room. As a movie, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, even the villains in it. You've got Blofeld, you've got Red Grant, you've got Rosa Klebb. It just works. Like, they seem, again, like villains that could exist in the world. They're not too kind of cartoonish, you know, they're very much real people that could exist in the world right now. It's one of those movies that just paces itself really nicely. It's very, very watchable. And it shows as well that Bond isn't just about the action. At its heart, James Bond is a story about a spy, and From Russia with Love really does bring that through very, very well. And at number 2, I've got Casino Royale. It's probably the Bond film I've seen the most. I remember I was about 17 when it came out in the cinema. I went to watch it about 3 or 4 times, I think. And then when it came out on DVD, I just kept watching it again and again because it's such a watchable action movie. Like, before you've even got to it as a Bond film, it's just a good action film. Like, there's so many great sequences in there. You've got the free running at the start, you've got the bit in the airport, you've got the scenes at the poker table, which on paper, that should be dull, but it isn't. Like, it's so watchable and engaging and gripping. And I think the highlight of this film for me as a whole is the chemistry between Daniel Craig, whose first Bond film it is, and Eva Green, of course, playing the role of Vesper. Those two work so well together, and that chemistry results in us feeling really emotional as an audience when Vesper Lynd dies at the end. You know, you really have invested in them as a pair, and so when they're separated, it is tragic. Again, you can see that the producers are trying to do something different with this movie, like they're trying to take Bond in a different direction, more of a sort of Bourne Identity type vibe rather than what Pierce Brosnan had brought to the table. And it did set the tone for the rest of the Daniel Craig films. They're all very much in this vein. At number 1, I've got Skyfall. Of course it had to be Skyfall. It was timely, it was appropriate, it was brilliantly shot. Like, the cinematography involved in the movie. Judi Dench is at her best in this. She's given plenty of room in the script to develop her character. And then you've got Javier Bardem as the villain. Absolutely brilliant. One of the best villains across the whole series, in my opinion. Even like the theme of the movie, the sort of questioning of the need for someone like a Bond and for MI6 and all of this, it feels timely. Like, it felt like a conversation that people were probably having in the real world anyway about the Bond films, but also about the way that we do things sometimes as a society and as a government. You know, we're living in an era of a lot of change, and this movie tapped into that quite strongly, which worked so well. You know, it's a thoughtful film, it's emotional in places, it's funny in places as well. Like, the character of Kincaid at the house in Scotland, Skyfall, he was a brilliant addition to the film. I just wish they had managed to convince Sean Connery to play the role. It was perfect for him. Apparently he didn't want to do it, but if they got him in there, that would have given it, you know, even more kudos. But yeah, great character, great movie. It's not gimmicky, it's thought out, it's well measured. And, you know, I'm yet to meet somebody who, when you talk about what's your favourite Bond film, Skyfall was always in that conversation there, so everyone seems to really, really appreciate it as a film. I love it. It's definitely my #1 James Bond film. Not gonna lie, guys, my coffee is now pretty cold. It's completely cold. Anyway, I'm gonna have to make myself another coffee, and I need to give my voice a rest because that was a lot of talking. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Like I say, I'm sure that there's probably bits of this video that you don't agree with, and that's fine because we're all allowed to have our own opinions on these types of things. But I would be really interested to hear, you James Bond fans out there, what your list is, what I got wrong, what you disagree with, what you agree with. Comment down below, let me know your thoughts, because it's always interesting to hear what other people have to say on these things. But hopefully what has come across is that I'm a big Bond fan. I will do some more James Bond content on this channel if you're interested in that. So do leave a comment down below and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. But I'll see you really soon for another video, so do subscribe and stay tuned. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.